January 15th, 2019, around 2:30 p.m. in Nairobi, Kenya. A suicide bomber walks into a crowded restaurant and detonates. The blast rips through the complex. Panic erupts from everywhere all at once. Gunmen follow, moving through the buildings, hunting anyone too slow to hide. Outside the perimeter, a man hears the chaos. Then, a woman's scream. Cut short by gunfire. Silence. 3 full seconds of it. In that moment, he makes a decision. He checks his rifle, pulls down his balaclava, and walks in alone. To understand the extent of danger this man walked into, one needs to comprehend what 14 Riverside Drive actually is. It's not a hotel. It is not an office building. It is a self-contained city block in the middle of Nairobi's upscale Westlands district. 5 acres of glass, polished concrete, and manicured gardens that are laid out across 6 individual multi-story buildings, each one a 2-winged structure served by its own central stairwells and elevator cores. 14 Riverside Drive houses the Dusit D2 luxury hotel, international banking institutions, law firms, multinational corporations, and Kenya's Commission for Revenue Allocation. And at any given point on a weekday afternoon, the population inside is always packed. Running the length of the internal grounds is a network of interlinking roads and landscape piazzas, open, elegant public spaces designed to feel welcoming. In the center of it all sits the Secret Garden restaurant, a popular dining venue where Nairobi's professional class eats lunch and closes deals. Beneath the entire complex, a structured parking silo holds 700 vehicles across multiple underground levels, a subterranean concrete maze with hundreds of hiding spots, poor sightlines, and no natural light. From the outside, 14 Riverside Drive looks exactly what it was designed to be, a sanctuary of global commerce, completely insulated from the chaos of the city around it. And the men who chose it as their target knew exactly what they were selecting. At approximately 14:28, on January 15th, 2019, a silver Toyota Ractus rolled through the outer cordon of 14 Riverside Drive. The car moves with purpose. It wasn't the hesitant crawl of someone looking for a parking spot, but the deliberate, committed advance of a vehicle with a set destination in mind. It pulls toward the main entrance of the complex and stops. 4 men get out. They're dressed in matching green tactical tops and green trousers, wearing heavy web gear loaded with spare magazines. Their movements are quick, not panicky. They were the unhurried, rehearsed economy of men who have done this walk many times in their heads. The operational leader is Ali Salim Gichunga, a 24-year-old Kenyan who studied IT, managed an internet cafe, and at some point in the years that followed, drove himself deep enough into Al-Shabaab's external operations network to become the commander of this cell. Standing near the entrance of the Secret Garden restaurant at this exact moment, acting alone, is the 5th member of the cell, Mahir Khalid Riziki, a Kenyan recruit who crossed back into the country through the El Wak border crossing just 48 hours earlier, took a bus to Nairobi, received his instructions, and is now standing in a grassy space beside the restaurant, pacing tightly, speaking into his phone. The CCTV footage of him in those final seconds is one of the most disturbing images to come out of that afternoon. He's agitated. He's moving in small, tight circles. He looks by every available measure like a man trying to control something that's trying to escape him from the inside. He stands there for approximately 1 minute. Then, he detonates. The blast hits the central piazza like a physical wall. 7 people at the Secret Garden are killed instantly. Patrons and hotel staff who had no knowledge of the man standing outside their window. The pressure wave shatters glass across the Grosvenor and Belgravia blocks simultaneously. In the lobby of the Dusit D2 hotel, people are knocked from their seats. In the office buildings, the sound arrives before any understanding of what it is. A single massive concussive wave that the body registers before the mind does. In the car park, alarms trigger across hundreds of vehicles at once. Outside the main entrance, Gichunga's 4 gunmen do not wait to see the dust settle. They throw 2 grenades at vehicles parked near the gate, turning them into burning wreckage that blocks the entrance and begins burning thick black smoke across the perimeter. Then they split. 2 men peel left, heading for the Hanover office block, moving floor by floor. The other 2 cross directly toward the Secret Garden, toward the smoke, the screaming, and the site of the detonation, and begin executing anyone who hasn't already run. Inside the complex, the next few minutes are not chaos. There's something worse than chaos. Chaos means randomness, but what unfolds inside 14 Riverside Drive is methodical. The gunmen move in pairs, corridor to corridor, office to office. Workers beneath their desks hear footsteps in the hallway and hold their breath. People barricade bathroom doors with furniture, and others send text messages to family members that read like last words, because for some of them, they are. Two groups converge at the far end of the complex, killing 6 more before moving their operation into the Dusit D2 hotel itself, where the remaining guests are still inside. Outside, the first police units are arriving at the perimeter. Cordons go up. A command post is assembled. Radio traffic fills the air. But the outer cordon is exactly that. Outer. Inside the 5-acre labyrinth, on the floors above the parking silo, the killing is still ongoing. And the only thing standing between the gunmen and the hundreds of civilians still hiding in the buildings is a locked door and the hope that no one comes through it. Outside the perimeter, there's a man who had witnessed the ensuing chaos, but he's not supposed to be there at all. That man is Christian Craighead, a British SAS operator living in Kenya in a training and advisory capacity. He has no orders, no commanding officer issuing a green light. He's not part of any designated quick reaction force. He arrives at the outer edge of the cordon under the straightforward assumption that local specialized units are already staging a tactical breach, that the machinery of an organized counter-terrorism response is already in motion. But he's wrong. Chris stands at the perimeter, reads the scene, and understands what he's looking at. The exterior is paralyzed. The interior is not. And then he hears it. The screams of a woman, followed by a burst of automatic gunfire, and then silence. Unable to stand aside and just watch, hoping the authorities would get the job done, Chris pulls his balaclava down over his face, raises his C8, and steps through the cordon alone. Meanwhile, 7 hours ago, the same day, January 15th, 2019, somewhere on the outskirts of Nairobi, a dirt road carves through the dry brush of the Kenyan landscape. The light is the warm, flat gold of an East African morning. The vehicle moves along the track, kicking up a slow wake of red dust. Christian Craighead is driving back from another routine morning shooting session. The kind of maintenance work that elite operators do quietly, without fanfare. The same way a surgeon might run through sutures before a shift. He has no briefing, no intelligence alert, no reason to believe the next 18 hours will be anything other than another unremarkable Tuesday in a foreign country. Through the dust ahead, a figure appears on the road. A hitchhiker. Craighead would later explain that stopping made no rational sense. Not for a foreign military operator. Not on an unpaved track in the outskirts of a major city. Not on any reading of basic operational security. But something compelled him, and he pulled over.
I do something that I shouldn't have done. Just common sense, nothing to do with drills, procedures. I stopped my vehicle, put the window down and say, hey buddy, do you want a lift? Something compelled me to pick him up, to say, do you want a lift? And why I did that, I would not have normally done that.
The man who climbed into his vehicle was entirely out of place. His suit was immaculate, and his shoes were polished. Not a trace of the red dust of the road he was standing on had touched any part of him. He carried with him a curved dagger with 2 distinct tips, which he explained he used to ward off evil spirits. The conversation they had was brief and strange. Then the man got out of the vehicle. What happened next, Craighead has described in the years since with a precision that people use when they're trying to accurately render something that doesn't fit inside the normal language.
Thank you so much for this. What's your name? I'm like, it's Chris. And he's like, tells me his name. And then he looks and says, how old are you? So I'm like 43. He goes, I'm 43. So when were you born? I said, September. So I was born in September. What day were you born? And I said, 15th. He's like, I don't know what day I was born, but this is a good sign because that means in September 1975, Chris and his name were both born. And he chuckles. He's like, he says some of this stuff I can't really recall.
When their conversation came to an end, the man had said something that Craig had found strange, but would hold on to in the gruesome hours that followed that encounter. And then he was gone.
So his foot hits the ground. His face changed. He's still the same shape, but it's a bit like if you say to someone, if you insulted someone, do you know how you'd get all serious and go like, what? And his face changes and he's like, Chris. And his voice is different. It's the same voice, but it's different. the description I use is it's quiet but loud, and it's everywhere. It's not coming from the direction of his mouth. It's coming from everywhere around me, and I can feel it in my heart vibrate. Everyone's like, Chris, may God bless you many times this day. And then like that, snaps out of it. Oh, thank you. And then closes the door, and then he runs off.
Craighead drove back toward the city. He carried a holy rosary and a Bible with him everywhere. And as a devout Catholic, a 28-year veteran, and a man who had been through enough to develop a working relationship with the idea that the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is thinner than it looks.
And I thought that's a bit strange. But some 30 hours later, after the most remarkable day of my life, that came to mean something. And even before I'd even left the complex, I was walking out towards my pickup to get back in it, and I could hear his words. And I was like, in my heart, I was like, yeah.
When the first photographs and videos of Christian Craighead emerged from the smoke of the Dusit D2 complex, they spread globally within hours. Not because of what he did, but because of what he was wearing while he did it. From the waist down, Chris Craighead was putting on Armani jeans, worn as though he was dressed for a dinner reservation. For footwear, he was putting on low-cut La Sportiva trail shoes. This was tactically incomprehensible, but personally it was understandable, because it shows a man who just wore anything he could lay his hands on when he was called. This wasn't a planned operation, there was no staging area, and there was no kit list. From the waist up, Craighead was putting on a Fjallraven shirt that had begun its life gray and faded through years of sustained field use into a pale and muted purple. Over it, a Cry AVS 1000 pack, a lap panel protecting his femoral arteries, and a Safariland holster mounted on a rigger's belt. His identity was concealed behind one of the most coveted pieces of kit in the special operations community, an Arctrix Leaf Assault Balaclava, the kind of item that appears on waiting lists. In his hands, Craighead had a 10-inch Colt Canada C8, equipped with a SIG Romeo 4T optic, a PEQ laser module, and a Surefire suppressor that kept his muzzle signature contained inside enclosed office spaces. On his chest, he had a patch of the pirate Blackbeard, a symbol that would later become inextricably linked to the tactical lifestyle world. Among his close friends in a regiment, there was another patch, a personalized purple heart joke that only the men who knew him would understand. The internet called him Obi-Wan Nairobi. The name came from what people saw, a lone cloaked figure arriving from nowhere, operating by a code that only he fully understood, carrying hardware that belonged to a world his civilian clothes refused to acknowledge. And the name stuck because it was accurate. Craighead has always been described as a lone operator, but that didn't mean he didn't have any help. Yes, he entered that complex without orders, without a chain of command, without institutional authorization of any kind. He went in because he chose to, when no one required him to, against all logical professional calculus. That's the definition of autonomous action, and no part of what follows diminishes it. But he was not physically alone from the first moment. Alongside him in the critical early hours was Dan Prestalo, a Slovenian national and member of the Diplomatic Protective Services Tactical Response Unit, the DPS TRU. He's visible in the same CCTV and press footage, moving through the complex in Craighead's orbit. Prestalo has spoken about the event publicly, and what he said places the record firmly. Chris led and coordinated the whole rescue operation that day. From my perspective, as I was there, he's the only person who deserves major credit for ending the siege and saving numerous lives. That is the assessment of a man who is standing next to him. Prestalo's presence actually shows us something more interesting than the lone wolf mythology. Two men, one British SAS, one Slovenian diplomatic security, arrived at the same complex, heard the same screaming, and made the same unilateral decision within minutes of each other. Neither had orders, neither had a mandate, but somehow, they found each other in the smoke and improvised a small operation inside a 5-acre labyrinth, with Craighead as the undisputed tactical lead.
You know, I went in alone, but then it became a team effort with some remarkable individuals.
What made Craighead enter that complex is something psychologists have spent decades trying to map and quantify. In interviews, he has described it as a superpower. His senses were dialed in beyond their normal threshold. He could see deeper into the shadowed corridors of the parking silo. He moved faster than the environment around him was moving. His mind processed the geometry of each room, each stairwell, each potential threat position, at a speed that felt entirely separate from conscious effort.
There's nothing was ever like that day. Nothing. And people talk about flow state. And whether it be training, I still do CQB today. And you still enter that flow state when you cross the threshold, whatever that be, whether it be skydiving, whether it be a CQB, whether it be some sort of sporting event. There's, when you get dialed in and you like it's on.
He called it a flow state, that specific cognitive zone where the complexity of the environment stops being an obstacle and starts being something the brain simply reads. The way a musician reads a score without consciously decoding every note. It didn't arrive by accident. It was something that was ingrained into him by years of training.
I unlocked some sort of superpower on that day. When I crossed that threshold, or whatever that point was, it felt like I could see further. I could hear things. I could move faster. I was stronger. My mental agility. I really unlocked this flow state, which was I'd have similar incidents before my military career, but on that day...
SAS selection has a roughly 95% failure rate. The navigation phase is designed specifically to break the part of a person that requires company to function. Candidates are sent alone into the freezing terrain of the Brecon Beacons at night, carrying a heavy burden, with a map and a compass and nothing else. They're trained to work in solitude. No team, no encouragement, with no one watching. Across 28 years of deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, across the Parachute Regiment and the Pathfinder Platoon, and finally, the 22nd SAS itself, Craighead has built a career that at every stage selected one quality above all others: the ability to function at the highest possible level, completely alone, when everything around you is failing. On January 15th, 2019, Craighead found himself in an environment where this particular ability would help him save countless lives. By mid-afternoon, the streets outside 14 Riverside Drive looked like a war zone. Kenyan police units have established a hard outer cordon across the approach roads. Armored vehicles are staged along the perimeter. Media helicopters are beginning to circle. The scene from the outside has the look of an organized response. Agencies deploying, a command structure forming, and a situation being contained. But the inside of the complex tells a different story. The terrorists aren't cornered. They're not pinned down. They're moving, active, deliberate, and unhurried, through a building they had clearly studied before they entered it. Each floor offered them cover, and each stairwell was a choke point they could take advantage of. Each office block is a warren of corridors, conference rooms, locked bathrooms, and suspended ceilings that a man with a rifle can use almost indefinitely if no one comes in after him. Within the first hour after the blast, Director of Criminal Investigations George Kennedy arrives at 14 Riverside Drive alongside officers from the Anti-Terrorism Police Unit and the Flying Squad. They open the attacker's abandoned vehicle near the main gate and find a phone and materials pointing unambiguously to terrorism. And a few meters away, a grenade detonation has already burned a row of vehicles. The assessment is immediate. This is beyond standard response capacity, and at that point, the call goes out for the Recce Squad. The General Service Unit's Recce Company is Kenya's most elite police unit, a counterterrorism formation that trains specifically for exactly this kind of scenario. A contested structure, multiple armed actors, an active mass casualty event, and civilian hostages distributed across multiple floors. They arrive on scene at approximately 1600. What they find when they enter the complex is something none of them could have fully anticipated from the briefing outside. Moving through the smoke of the central piazza, already inside the cordon, already deep in the building, is a masked figure in civilian jeans carrying a suppressed C8. This is the moment that, in any other context, could end in a catastrophe. Friendly fire is not a rare accident in counterterrorism operations. It is one of the most statistically consistent risks of any engagement involving multiple responding forces in a shared space, particularly in a chaotic, smoke-filled environment where no one has had time to exchange radio frequencies, share physical descriptions, or coordinate entry routes. The Recce Commandos do not know his name. They do not know his country of origin. They do not know his mandate. All they know is that there's a masked, heavily armed, apparently foreign operator conducting combat operations inside their jurisdiction, and they're meeting him for the first time in a corridor. Craighead has described his actions that afternoon as being labeled by a senior military figure back home as evidence of a mutinous attitude, behavior that promotes lawlessness in the military. He does not dispute the label. What he disputes is the implication that lawlessness and right are mutually exclusive. The SAS motto, he said later, is, "Who dares wins," not "Who asks for permission wins." He pointed out that on that day, it was never about getting a medal. It was about stepping up, doing the right thing, and getting the job done. When the recce squad saw him, they did not shoot him. They absorbed him into their ranks. From that point forward, Craighead functions as an integrated element inside the Kenyan-led command structure, a foreign node operating under Kenyan authority. His singular skill set folded into a larger institutional operation that now has access to something that it did not have an hour ago. A man who has already been inside the building, already cleared multiple floors, and can tell them what he knows. All the separate responding teams, regular police, recce commandos, KDF special forces placed on standby, Western counterterrorism advisors, who now have access to the complex's CCTV room, are collapsed into a single multi-agency unit. A senior property manager is brought to the command center to brief the operators on the building's layout, and the lobby of the Dusit D2 hotel becomes an active intelligence and coordination hub. In the hours that followed, what the CCTV cameras record is not a gunfight, but a procession, line after line of civilians running out of the building, hands up to show that they're not a threat, moving fast, and guided through the central piazza by operators who are simultaneously watching the rooftops, the stairwells, and the parking silo below them for any sign of the terrorist repositioning. Some of the civilians come out running, some are carried, some emerge after hiding for 6 or 7 or 8 hours in locked rooms on the upper floors. Craighead is visible in this footage repeatedly, moving from the building to the perimeter, turning around, and going back in. His presence in the extraction corridors is not passive. He exposes himself to direct fire from the positions the gunmen are still holding on the upper floors, physically placing himself between the militants and the civilians he's moving out. He does this more than once. He does it the way his SAS training taught him to do the things no one was watching him do, without waiting for someone to tell him it was necessary. By midnight, the recce squad, through a combination of systematic floor clearance and electronic surveillance from the CCTV room, had successfully separated every known civilian from the militants' area of operation. The terrorists were already reduced to 4, the suicide bomber already gone, and had been pushed upward, floor by floor, until they were cornered on the 7th floor of the Dusit D2 hotel. They're sending photographs of dead civilians back across the border. Their commander is on the phone with contacts in Ruweka, on the outskirts of Nairobi. They're not surrendering. They never intended to. At approximately 0400 on January 16th, the decision was made. 2 recce commando teams of 7 operators each are positioned on the 3rd floor. A remote-controlled surveillance robot has gone up to the 6th floor and confirmed the militants' position above. One team takes the stairs and locks the exit on the 6th floor. The second team scales the exterior of the building on ropes, enters through a 7th floor window, and seals the terrorists' last exit route. The remaining 4 gunmen are sitting ducks. The final room entry lasts minutes. The attackers throw grenades that bounce off ballistic shields. 2 recce commandos take shrapnel in the legs and are carried out by their colleagues. But all 4 terrorists were killed. At 10:28 in the morning of January 16th, the Australian High Commission receives formal confirmation. The incident at the Dusit D2 complex is over, and the last attacker has been neutralized. The final accounting is sad. 21 civilians are dead, 16 Kenyan nationals, 1 British citizen, 1 American, 3 others unidentified. All 5 Al-Shabaab militants are dead, and an estimated 700 people have been rescued from the 5-acre complex. Craighead does not leave for another 4 hours until the last shot is fired. He exits the complex approximately 22 hours after he entered it. He personally confirmed 2 kills during the operation. A full account of how that happened remains, by order of the British government, classified. Within hours of the complex being declared secure, the man who had entered a classified counterterrorism operation without orders in a foreign country wearing Armani jeans had become a global military legend before the Ministry of Defense had issued a single official statement about what had occurred. That sequence of events and Craighead's photo going public before the institution could contain it is the single most important fact in everything that follows. The Conspicuous Gallantry Cross is the 2nd highest military decoration that the United Kingdom can award. It exists for one specific category of act: conspicuous gallantry in the direct face of the enemy. It's an honor that very few people have received. Craighead was told he was to receive his from Her Majesty the Queen in 2020, but the unfortunate events of 2020 made sure the ceremony was cancelled. In 2021, a civil servant handed him the medal in its box in a modest office in St. James Park. There was no ceremony, no citation read aloud, and no room of uniformed peers. Just a box, passed across a desk by a man who was not Queen. Craighead wrote afterwards that receiving it this way was, without design, probably more fitting with his outlook on life. The institution had decorated him as it promised. Simultaneously, they had started working on the legal architecture to silence him. Upon retiring from the British Army in 2020, Craighead sat down and wrote a memoir. He called it One Man In. He submitted it through the required process, applying for express prior authority in writing, the EPA clearance that every former UKSF operator must obtain before publishing any account of their service. On July 25, 2022, the Secretary of State for Defense refused. The Ministry of Defense's position was unambiguous. It claimed that the unredacted publication of the memoir would cause grave and irreversible harm to the operational effectiveness of the UK Special Forces, damage internal morale, and fracture intelligence sharing relationships with allied foreign states. Craighead challenged the refusal under Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, his right to freedom of expression. The MOD, in a historic concession, abandoned its long-standing, neither confirm nor deny policy, specifically regarding his identity and his involvement in the Dusit D2 operation, formally accepting in open court that he was the operator in the photographs that the entire world had already seen. However, on October 3, 2023, a judge handed down judgment. They claimed that by voluntarily signing the UKSF confidentiality contract, Craighead's Article 10 rights had been legally attenuated. The refusal of EPA was a proportionate interference with his freedom of expression, and the MOD's gag order held. The man who went into a building full of armed terrorists alone, because it was the right thing to do, lost to the institution that trained him in a closed courtroom in London. So he wrote a children's book instead, titled The Wrong Wolf. Craighead just wanted an opportunity to write a great modern war memoir, but the government told him he couldn't. 7 years later, Christian Craighead is still working, but not in the way he worked at 14 Riverside Drive. He works now the way a man works when the battlefield has changed shape, but the mission has not. He joined the training division of Staccato, a Texas-based firearms company, where he runs elite active shooter response programs for SWAT teams across the United States. On January 15, 2026, the 7th anniversary of the attack, he posted on Instagram the same way he posts every year on that date. Christian Craighead is still trying to get his book out to the masses, but his last update on it is an Instagram post from 2024, where he stated that he doesn't think that the book would be coming out anytime soon. The legend of Christian Craighead is real. That part is settled. The photographs exist. The CCTV footage exists. The court judgment exists. The children's book exists, and it's a bestseller. The man in Armani jeans who walked through a cordon alone because a woman screamed and he could not unhear it. That man is a permanent fixture of modern military history. No MOD ruling changes that, and no publication delay will change that. But the full account, the unredacted version, the room-by-room record of what he did and how he did it, the story that has never been allowed to be told completely, still sits in a classified schedule somewhere inside the Royal Courts of Justice, locked behind a judgment that described its contents as too dangerous for the public to read.